Today's recipe is sweet onion pudding. You have 6 onions sliced thinly. And I'm going to show you what 6 onions sliced thinly looks like. Final onion is cut. I want you to look at this pile of onions that we've got to put in the skillet and caramelize. Okay, I'm breaking the onions up into rings. And again, this is an awful lot of onions. It is going to caramelize in 1 stick of butter. And it's going to take 30 to 40 minutes for this to cook properly before we can go forward with the rest of the recipe, which includes an egg mixture and some other things that will allow us to bake this onion pudding. Look at the onions. They're beginning to brown. They're not quite ready yet. This is what really beautiful caramelization, that's a hard word to say, looks like. We've got to let the onions cool for probably 10 or 15 minutes anyway, because the egg mixture that will finish this dish could be scrambled eggs if we don't let the onions cool enough. It's time to crack the eggs, get them mixed up with the rest of the ingredients. Calls for 6 eggs and about half a cup of Parmesan cheese that we'll mix in, and 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 cups of heavy cream. So I've added the half cup of Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to mix this well. I'm going to set this egg mixture aside. There are some dry ingredients that go into the egg mixture as well. We've got 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of regular flour, whoop, goodness, tablespoon of baking powder, and about a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to want to make sure that those onions have in fact cooled enough for us to go forward with putting this egg mixture together. Because we're putting an egg mixture in this casserole dish, we need to spray it a little bit. Eggs will stick pretty badly, so I just have got a little bit of olive oil spray, and I'm spraying it. I'm going to add the dry mixture to our eggs, and I'll be blending it again. I don't see any evidence that there's any of the flour left over, so I think we're good. I need to get the onions and put them in the base of the casserole. Okay, I'm going to spread these pretty evenly in the bottom of this casserole dish. Now, let's add the egg mixture. I'm going to use the spoon just to kind of make sure that the egg mixture can get all below the onions. This will cook until the eggs have set, maybe 40 minutes or so. We'll let you know the exact time when it's done. I've got about a 7.5 pound bone-in pork butt. You'll see that I have shaved off a portion of the fat cover from this, and I'm going to be rubbing a little bit of salt and pepper into the pork. And we're going to cook this pork for 8 hours in a slow cooker. You can also do it 8 hours in your oven if you choose. The pork butt has been cooking now for 8 hours. The next step is to take it out of the liquid that has formed, put it into a bowl, let it cool a bit, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator to let it get cold enough to cut the fat away and leave only the meat. Now this morning, I'm going to be working on removing as much fat from the meat as I can. I have left part of this meat to show you sort of what it looks like. This was well marbled meat, and you can see that there are chunks of fat that are attached to the meat. You're gonna throw as much of that away as you can. You're gonna keep some of the meat. You'll lose some in the process. Don't worry about that. The next step in the process of making the sausage is to add 8 cups of chicken broth and 2 to 3 teaspoons of salt to a large pan. Then we will add 3 cups of steel cut oats. So you want to keep this over a medium-low heat and just stir it on a regular basis. Watch it until the water is absorbed into the oats. As you can see, all of the chicken broth has been absorbed into the steel cut oats. It's time now to add some spices to this. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of pepper, 1 to 2 teaspoons of chili flakes. I add 1 because my family doesn't like it really hot. You'll add 1 tablespoon of thyme and 3 tablespoons of rubbed sage. So you want to blend all of this in together, and you can see the consistency of the oats. When you're satisfied that it's been blended well, turn the heat off, and we have got the bag of chopped pork that we will add to the pan, and hope against hope that we don't have too much and it spills over. When we are finished with blending this and folding it together, we will let the contents cool a bit and put it into a 9 by 13 pan that we have lined with plastic wrap so that we can turn the sausage out when it has set. So we'll come back to this after we have gotten it blended and put in the pan.
This is what our finished gritwurst looks like. We turned it out of the pan and cut it up, and we fried this on the stovetop. You can also add it to biscuits. It's a great breakfast sausage. It's a great any time of the day sausage, honestly. Make it and tell us what you think in the comment section below. Today we're going to be making a basic quiche recipe that you can add to or subtract and really make your own. We're going to begin by chopping 1 bundle of green onions or scallions. When we named our channel Pope's Plates Generational Recipes, we really started with the foundation of my mother's, grandmother's, and great-grandmother's recipes. But all recipes have to start somewhere. And this quiche recipe starts with me. I made it once or twice, and then I kind of tweaked it and made it my own. And now it's kind of the thing I'm known for. If I'm going to a party, people ask me to bring it. And it's easy and it's fun to make in bulk. One of the things you may see is that I'm using 2 pie shells here. I almost always make 2 or 4 quiche at a time. Part of that is because the deep dish pie crust come in a package of 2. And yes, I know that you can make your own pie crust, and if you can do that, go for it. I am not good at that, and so I buy the deep dish pie crust, and they come in a package of 2. So I usually always make 2. As you can see, I have distributed the green onions fairly easily into 2 deep dish pie crusts shells. And then next we're going to add the cheese. My preference in this classic quiche is to use 3 different cheeses: grated Swiss, grated Parmesan, and grated cheddar. Is it better to use it fresh off the block that you grate yourself? Absolutely. It melts more easily. But if you don't have that and you have pre-grated cheese on hand, you can go ahead and use that. So we've added 1/2 cup of grated Swiss cheese, 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, and 3/4 cup of grated yellow cheddar, I prefer sharp, cheese. And we're going to add each one of those to our pie crust shells. Okay, you're going to notice now that our onions are kind of buried under our cheese. And so what I do, and I use my fingers, feel free to use a spoon or a fork if you want to. My hands are clean. I just mix it up. I make sure that everything is evenly distributed. You're going to want to do this if you add sausage or vegetables or, ham, spinach. But one of the things that's really important is that if you're adding an ingredient that's kind of wet, like tomatoes, you want to make sure they're very evenly distributed, because if they all are on the bottom, then your crust is going to be incredibly soggy on the bottom. You may notice that I dropped some shells in our eggs. That happens to me all the time. And one of the best ways to get a small piece of shell out of eggs that have already been cracked is to use a bigger piece of shell to dip it in there and dig it out. I've also noticed when I was making this that the eggs were a little smaller than I am accustomed to, and so I added some more eggs. I would much rather have more of the egg mixture than less of the egg mixture, and at the end I'll tell you what you can do with leftovers. To our eggs, we're going to add 1 cup heavy whipping cream. That's a 1/2 cup for each quiche, and 1 cup sour cream. Again, that's a 1/2 cup for each of the quiches. And then I'm going to add a pinch of salt or pepper to taste. This is a time that you can also add other herbs or spices. For example, if I were to make a smoked salmon quiche, smoked salmon and feta sounds wonderful, I would probably add dill or parsley. So you can make it your own. Sometimes in this rendition of quiche, I add Italian herb mix, but this time I just wanted to keep it pretty basic. And what we're going to do is you're going to use an electric hand mixer to mix this. If you don't have one, the quiche will still work, but you really want to use an electric hand mixer on a really high setting, because you want to whip in as much air as possible into your egg and cream mixture. As you can see, as I continue to mix, the egg mixture gets frothier and frothier. The other thing that is important to remember when you're making this quiche is that once you mix the egg mixture well, you're going to want to put it in the quiche as soon as possible, quiche shells. And so you want to see these bubbles and a little bit of foam froth in your egg, if possible, if you're able to use an electric hand mixer. If not, just try to use a fork or a whisk as quickly as possible to whip air into it. The next thing you're going to want to make sure you have is a ladle or a deep spoon. And you're going to begin to ladle your egg mixture 1 ladle at a time into the pie crust shells. And you're also going to want to not just pour it all in one place, but sort of spread it out, because that egg mixture has to sink through to the bottom, all the cheese and the vegetables. And you can see on the screen what I'm talking about. It just makes it easier. And I personally, because I usually make more than one quiche, I'll ladle egg mixture into one and give it a chance to settle while I'm ladling it into the second one. It just keeps one section from being more eggy than the other. Now, before we add the quiche to a cookie sheet, You don't have to put it on a cookie sheet, but I spill things if I don't. We're going to lift the quiche up like an inch off the counter and drop it. You're just going to allow some of the, if there are any air pockets, to pop and everything to be a little bit more spread out a little bit more evenly. And I usually put 2 quiche on any cookie sheet. Again, it just makes it easier to load and unload. You're going to want to cook your quiche on 350 degrees for 45 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. If you make this, please tell us how you like it. And if you added something that we didn't add, we would love to hear about it in the comment section below. Thanks.
Great thing for your Christmas morning. I've got a load of things from the refrigerator. Most of our recipe today is made up of cheese, eggs, sausage, and bread. The first thing we're going to do is to get the sausage in the pan. Okay, we're adding the sausage today to the skillet. Alrighty, sausage is cooked. Now we need to drain it so that we can get as much grease as possible off of it. I'm just going to put it here on a paper towel rather than dirtying up another plate. And it will be completely drained by the time we get ready to add it to our casserole dish. Oh, we're lucky that didn't have a whole lot of grease to it. Whoop. Sausage overboard. All right, our next step is to take 6 slices of bread. And this is artisan bread. It's a little thicker than regular sandwich bread is. And we're going to cut the crusts off of this bread. I have a serrated knife. I want to leave as much of the bread slice as I can, and this is a little curvy bread. So we're going to have to take a little bit of the bread that we may not want to take, but leave as much of the slice as you can leave. Get my casserole dish. We want to put the slices of bread in the bottom of the casserole dish. It looks like, frankly, we might be able to use another piece of bread. I think I'm going to get one more. And this is okay to make an adjustment to the recipe as you need to. If it doesn't look like it's quite right, if it's not quite the right consistency, then make an adjustment. Okay, that is perfect. The next step is to cut the brie. We have a round of brie. Some people like the rind on it. This recipe calls for removing the rind. I'm going to cut it in quarters to make it a little bit easier to maneuver this rind off. I'm cutting the rind off this brie. Let me make a suggestion to you. Brie is a very soft cheese. Cutting it even with a serrated knife, which makes it easier, means that you're losing some of the cheese. I would suggest that you freeze the wheel of brie before you begin cutting it. That lets you get the rind off a little more easily than what I'm experiencing with this. It's been a while since I fixed this casserole, and frankly, I just forgot that it was a good idea to cut the rind off of frozen cheese. But I'm essentially quartering it so that when I put it in the casserole, we're going to have little bits of brie spread all over the sausage. This is making a bit of a mess here. I'm going to move my casserole dish over, and I'm going to grab my sausage. You want to spread about half of the sausage over the bread on the bottom. And you're going to take about half of the brie and break it up into little pieces and put it over the sausage. All of this is going to melt together as it heats up and cooks once we put the egg mixture on it. Then on top of the brie and the sausage, we're going to add Parmesan cheese. I've got about a cup of Parmesan cheese measured into this bag. And we're going to take half of that and sprinkle that over the sausage, the brie, and the bread. Then we're going to finish with the next layer of sausage. Take the balance of it, get all of it that you can get, spread evenly, break up, again, the pieces of brie as evenly distributed as you can. Great day. This is really gooey. I think frozen would be a whole lot better. A little bit more here. All right, and the rest of the Parmesan cheese goes on top. That looks like enough. I don't think I'm going to use all of that. All right, the next step is to crack our eggs and blend the eggs, heavy whipping cream, milk, and the spices together. Well, this egg doesn't want to give up. Oop, eggshell. Got it. All right, the next thing we do is to add 2 cups of heavy whipping cream to our eggs. 2 cups is the equivalent of 1 whole pint of whipping cream. Then we're going to add 2 full cups of milk. Boy, that's a full bowl. We've also got 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sage, and 1 teaspoon of dry mustard. And if I can get this all back together again, I'll get my mixer and we will blend this up. Let's start on a low speed because there's a lot of liquid in here and I just as soon not get it all over me. But we do want the eggs blended well. So you're incorporating some air into this as you go. Okay, that looks great. Now we're going to add the egg mixture to the casserole. And this is going to be the end of day 1's activity. We'll seal this, put it in the refrigerator, and let it sit overnight. And then tomorrow morning, before Christmas morning stocking opening, I'll get the rest of the egg mixture in and we'll cook it. Let me get some foil to cover this up. Okay, I've got the foil out. Let's get a long enough piece so that we can seal this casserole well. Make sure that you go around the edges. Turn it around here. Well, making a mess of that. Okay, we've got it sealed up. We're going to put it in the refrigerator. It needs to sit overnight. This is going to let all of the bread and the egg mixture soak together. So when we cook it tomorrow, it's all going to be great. Welcome back. This is day 2 of the preparation of our sausage brie breakfast casserole. We've got the casserole out of the refrigerator. Our next step is to finish the top layer, which is 2 eggs and another cup of milk. I'm going to set the casserole aside, get the eggs. Whoop. One additional cup of milk, cream, no salt, no pepper this time. All we're going to do is blend this quickly. We will put this into a preheated 350-degree oven for about an hour or until the egg is completely set. The casserole is going to be finished cooking in just a few minutes. To prepare for the very end of this, we're going to slice some green onion. This will be scattered over the top of the casserole. Gives us just a little bit of a bite. We want to get both the white parts and the green. The green parts were not quite as nice looking on these onions as I would have liked, but that is what gives the color. If we find when we get the casserole out that it's not quite what we'd like, we can also use a little bit of flaked parsley to brighten the color a little bit. Alrighty, we're going to put this in the bowl and it'll be ready as soon as the casserole is finished. I have tested the casserole. It took a little longer than we expected, probably an hour and 20 minutes, but it's ready now. It looks so good. I can hardly wait to dig in. The last thing we have to do is to sprinkle on the green onions. That adds just a little bit of color. If you remember, we put those on earlier. All right, we're ready to serve this casserole. We're going to cut a little bit and get it out. The first piece is always a little bit harder to get out. But there we go. Ooh, that looks really nice. I'm going to take a really quick bite. See how it tastes. That is really good.
Today we're going to be making egg muffins. One of the things that I do usually when I make a quiche is I make egg muffins with any of the leftover quiche base mixture, and then I use whatever leftovers I have in my house, maybe tomatoes or mushrooms, and in this case we're going to be using tomatoes, cheese, cheddar cheese, Swiss cheese, and ham. In the event that you want to make egg cups or egg muffins, without using the quiche base and just make an egg base yourself, you're going to add 8 eggs, medium to large eggs, a half a cup of heavy cream or sour cream, depending on how thick you want your base, a pinch of salt, and a pinch of pepper. You can also add any kind of seasonings that you want. If you are making a spicy one, you may want to add a little bit of curry powder or chili powder. It's really up to you. You're allowed to and able to be as creative as you want to be with making egg muffins. Electric hand mixer that tends to not only make sure everything is mixed in well, but it also aerates the base, and so your egg muffins or quiche, whatever you're making, come out a little more fluffy and light than if you don't do that, especially when you're making things that have cheese, and cheese is really heavy, and so the more air you can get into your mixture, the lighter that your egg muffin is going to be. As I said before, egg muffins are a great way to use up any leftovers that you had. My mother was at a funeral and she was making some sandwiches for the reception afterward. And so she had some leftover Swiss cheese and ham. And I happened to have some leftover tomatoes from where I had made tacos and some cheddar cheese. And so you can really use anything that you want. In this case, that's what we used. I also really love making egg muffins with feta and spinach, sort of a spanakopita kind of egg muffin. They're just so good and so versatile and such a good way to get rid of your leftovers. I make egg muffins a lot because I have a lot of leftovers. But one of the things that I was talking to somebody about was that if you are making these for yourself or your kids or your family, you can call them egg muffins. But if you're making them for a really fancy party or something like that, you can call them gluten-free or crustless quiches. Same thing, but one sounds much fancier than the other. As you can see here, I am chopping the ham and the Swiss cheese into bite-sized, a little smaller than maybe bite-sized pieces. And I use liners for my muffin tins. They just come out easier. I have a really hard time when I make egg muffins without using the liners. You can do whatever you want, but the silicone liners really make cleanup easy and the cooking easy. And so I'm going to drop just about a third of the way full, maybe a little bit more, ham and cheese into the silicone egg cups. And then later I'm going to fill them with the egg mixture. And as I said, I also had some tomatoes left over from when I had tacos. I will say that the tomatoes were a little watery, or just watery in general, and that they made the egg muffins not as sturdy or solid. I think they taste great, not that that matters, but you may want to take what leftovers you're using into consideration, especially if you are needing the egg cups to travel well. At this point, we're going to add some cheddar cheese, grated store-bought. It melts better if you do it yourself, but I happen to have some cheese that was already pre-grated or shredded. And we're going to add those on top of the tomatoes. And for this, I just added a touch of salt or pepper, but I think Italian seasoning would be really good in this, or dried oregano, or maybe even a touch of balsamic vinegar would be good. Now I'm going to use a ladle to fill our egg muffin cups. It can be tempting to fill them almost to the top, but because this egg mixture is so airy, they're going to rise in a souffle-like manner. And so you only want to fill them between a half and 2/3 of a way to the top to give room for the egg muffin to expand. Because I was already making quiche, our oven is already preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. If you are making a more dense egg muffin, it may take longer to cook. So you're going to start out at 25 minutes cook time and then check it every 5 minutes or so and take them out when a toothpick comes out clean. If you made egg muffins, I would love to hear how they turned out in the comment section below. And tell us what ingredients you used. I would love to get some great ideas from you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for visiting Pope's Plates. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Click the notification bell so that you'll know when we have new videos available. And make sure you subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Until I see you again, let's get cooking.